FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
Where does internal, personal power come from? What is the source of our energy, our horsepower, if you will? And where does our devotion and commitment and resolve come from to use our power for good and righteous purposes? As I looked at the list of presenters and the remarkable accomplishments of each of you, I wondered, how do they keep going? How do they keep their energy up for this kind of work? Progressive movements of any kind are littered with the debris of those who started out all fired up, idealistic, and creative. But then, in the face of overwhelming odds and powerful opposition, those idealistic and energetic people lost their vitality, often became bitter and angry and cynical, and ultimately lost that sense of inner power to keep going in the good work they were doing. These forces are at work in all the work you and I do. They may be the benign inertia of, we've always done it that way, or more destructive, the forces of consumerism, waste, and greed are rampant, not to mention racism and sexism and heterosexism, which are strong indeed and relentless in their attempts to keep us on a self-dividing and self-destructive path. And daily we are confronted with humankind's seemingly endless ability and willingness to exploit and harm one another, especially in the me-first world. So how do you and I continue to do this work we are engaged in, finding the power within to confront the forces that seek to defy us? In the last 6 years, I have found myself at the center of a storm caused not by my election as a bishop of the church, but because I am a happily partnered gay man who happened to be elected as a bishop of the church. Calls for me not to accept that election came from across the world, sometimes from archbishops and the church's hierarchy, and sometimes from people I don't even know sitting in pews across the world. All this accompanied by death threats and hatred that would take your breath away. There's nothing that gets your attention like a picture of you and your partner received in the mail, accompanied by the words, "I have a bullet for each of your heads when you least expect it." I had to wear a bulletproof vest at my consecration, and as recently as this January, the Vermont State Police arrested a guy who apparently was on his way to kill me with MapQuest maps to my house and a sawed-off shotgun lying beside him in the passenger seat of his car. And the question that I am most asked is, how do you keep going? How do you keep doing your work in the face of such hatred and opposition? I'm going to guess that although you may not face death threats on a regular basis, you too struggle to keep going in the face of destructive opposition. Where do you find your inner strength, your inner power, to keep fighting the good fight, whether it be in the area of human rights, saving the environment, truly just investing, or working on behalf of the world's most vulnerable? Some of you are people of faith, of whatever faith. Others of you may not subscribe to any organized institutional religion, but feel a deep and abiding commitment to a set of values along the lines of love your neighbor as yourself. Others may not think of yourselves as spiritual at all, but I would push you to explore whether or not that is true. I would argue that we are all spiritual. It's just a matter of whether or not we will pay attention to that side of ourselves. And I would also argue that not paying attention to our inner spiritual power is a recipe for anger, cynicism, and defeat in the work we hope to do.